Hello, folks. Good evening. How are you today? You're welcome to another edition of Just Banter. And today we're talking about women, leadership, medicine. Interesting combination, isn't it? A lot has been going on over the years, especially when it comes to the world of medicine. Women have always been known to be leaders when it comes to society. Yeah, you can't have a good society without strong women. A lot of women have actually broken strong barriers when it comes to medicine. But we've seen that there are quite a few curious things when it comes to Nigeria, in terms of medicine. Doing our research and trying to figure out the type of leaps and bounds women have had when it comes to medicine in Nigeria, something strange, happened. One of the strange things that we saw, but the one that at the end of the day we really, really had to happen was the fact that the Nigerian Medical Association has probably never had a female president, especially with the tons and tons of contributions that women have made when it comes to medicine in Nigeria. So tonight we're going to be talking to two very special people. They're both doctors, and we're going to be talking about the role of women in healthcare leadership. Don't mind me, I'm blubbering tonight. Nigeria is a very interesting place, so it's all good. So first things first, we're going to check if one or two, both our guests, if they are both on in the background, in the backstage. Okay, they're both there. So first I'm going to introduce you, Dr. Peju Adeniran, and then I'm going to bring also on Dr. Adaize Ore. Hello, Dr. Peju, how are you?
I'm very well. Good evening.
Good evening. It's great to have you on tonight.
It's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
An absolute pleasure. And I'm going to introduce into the studio Dr. Adaize Ore as well.
Hello, Good Dr. evening.
How are you today?
I'm fantastic. Thank you for having me on the program this evening.
It's an absolute pleasure to have both of you, especially since we're talking about the role of women in healthcare leadership. When we talk about healthcare leadership, where women are concerned, both of you are Nigerians, so we're probably going to be focused a bit more on Nigeria, even though we're going to highlight a few, women who have been doctors, who have done great things in different parts of the world. Now, we tried doing a little bit of research to see, who was the first female president of the Nigerian Medical Association, and we couldn't seem to find anything like that. Is that true?
You're absolutely right. There hasn't been a female president of the Nigerian Medical Association, unfortunately.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Your research was correct. That hasn't happened.
I actually, told our researchers that was just probably not possible. How could you not have, female president of the Nigerian Medical Association? Considering that when you look at the likes of ICANN, you've had the likes of Mrs. Oshiemi, you've had Mrs. Imokwede and the likes, and you look at other professions as well, other professional associations, and you notice that women have played a very strong and leading role in those associations and the development of those associations in Nigeria. What happened in the Nigerian Medical Association?
Well, I'm going to say, even if you go as far as looking at the archives of many of the colleges of medicine, you will see that we always had female representation. You will see the archives of University of Ibadan or University of Ife say, oh, these were the graduating female doctors as far back as 50 years ago. And yet, even though we have both genders represented in students and, of course, graduating as doctors, the Nigerian Medical Association has not thought to elect a female president, so that you have medical women having to have their own association to decide, as if I'm sure could have been born out of the frustration of trying to, get leadership at that level. And when that didn't happen, they had to have, Nigerian Medical Women's a fantastic association, but for me, it's particularly very problematic why that had to happen.
Is it the nature of the politics or what? Because I still can't wrap my head around it, especially when you look at the huge contributions that women have made. So take, for instance, I'm sure the very first form of medicine that we had that was related to women were midwives. Midwives have always been an intrinsic part of society from thousands of years. They are the ones delivering children in every community, in every town, in every city. If you had cities, as far back as then. So how come women are not at the forefront, especially when it comes to a country like Nigeria, where women are so strong and women are so assertive in society?
So it's actually quite unfortunate that for a profession that's supposed to be as progressive as medicine is, it still seems to be a bit archaic in that women have not had the opportunity to progress along the career to positions of leadership. And so where you see, like Dr. Beju mentioned, a very strong presence of women in medical schools as young doctors up until the mid-level of the career, you start to see them start to drop off and not advance to the higher levels of leadership. So even when you're looking at university provosts of the colleges, heads of department, while there's still a few women, few and far between, not many women do rise to those positions. And that's where the problem is. That recognition and acknowledgement of women's roles in healthcare as being a stepping stone towards attaining leadership positions in the profession. And so when you see top contenders for the NMA, Nigerian Medical Association elections, you would hardly see any woman, being featured this is at the state level and at the national level as well. So these are just some of the things that have made us realize we need stronger advocacy to highlight the fact that women are equal players in the profession and therefore should be given equal opportunities to attain positions of leadership and shouldn't just be discountenanced for the mere fact that they are women, because a lot of the time that's just it. There's just that perception that, oh, she's a woman and the position of leadership, it will be too burdensome for her. And that's not the way it should be.
Well, I don't know why they would have that perception, because in the first place, in the Nigerian business or entrepreneurial space, we've seen two women who have come across as absolute leaders in terms of innovation. The first one started a mobile, an air ambulance, using private jets to fly people to hospitals and all, providing a very unique solution that was very timely as of the time that it came. And then you also now had another woman who also came up with the idea of blood banks being able to supply different hospitals with blood, getting people to donate blood. She actually set up a 360-degree supply chain. These were things that men did not do. So how can a woman be burdened down when they have the ability to even think outside the box and be able to come up with such unique solutions?
Well, first of all, I'm going to say that thinking is not even outside the box, because if you look at it, the interface of healthcare delivery between provider and consumer is facilitated by the woman. We are the ones that ensure that people access service delivery in the hospital in the first place. We are the ones that take the entire family to the hospital in the first place. And if you think about public health, which is the biggest way that the public interfaces with the health system, is completely manned by women, whether they are extension workers, whether they're community health workers, whether they're midwives. So it's already a system that integrates women on this side and women on the other side, the domestic implementer. They're already working in sync to ensure that immunization, nutrition, malaria, TB, HIV, the women are already the ones. It's a female-linked system, which now leads to how do we move from a female-linked, female-carried, female-implemented system to somehow, when we get to the top of governance and leadership, you don't see these women. You don't see that linkage. And the men are leading, stepping on a foundation that's being upheld by women. And I want to say it's far beyond just NMA. And we're looking at a dearth of female health commissioners, female health ministers,
Yeah.
women, a lack of women in charge of affairs of legislation for health at the level of it's testosterone everywhere. And yet it's the women that are delivering this health system. It's untenable.
I mean, it's pretty surprising to myself because, like you rightly said, I've always noticed women being at the forefront when it comes to healthcare leadership, either from the home side or from the medical side. Because in most hospitals, especially growing up in Nigeria, for instance, most hospitals that I walked into, the first or the primary form of contacts that you have is with a nurse, and the nurses are female. So it took quite a long time for me to realize that you also had male nurses. So women have always been at that forefront, and yet they're being segregated, or should I say relegated, when it comes to the healthcare sector. That's amazing. I've only known of one female commissioner for health in Nigeria, and she happened to be from northern Nigeria, Adamawa State, if I'm correct. Her name was Dr. Fatih Abubakar. She's about the only one that I know. Mm-hmm. Most of the commissioners for health that I've seen are all male. So it's pretty interesting considering the fact that the first female doctor in Nigeria, 1971. So we're talking about 49 years on, and you still don't have women in leadership when it comes to healthcare. What do you think can change? What do you think needs to be done?
So I was especially happy that you brought up the issue of female commissioners of health, because Dr. Beja and I were actually discussing this not too long ago. The National Council on Health is the highest making decision body for healthcare in the country. And in that National Council, the representatives of each of the states are the commissioners of health. And at the moment, out of the 36 states and the FCT, there are only 4 women who are representing the various states across the country. So 4 women and 32 or 33 men make up the NCH. So you see that that's not even up to 15%. That's like 11%. It's the problem with these false perceptions is that everybody sees them as a benchmark. And then an executive governor comes into office and looks around and sees that majority of the commissioners of health he sees are male. And in his mind, you see, I'm even speaking to this stereotype because the governor, we're talking about an executive governor, and is likely to be male. Therefore, the commissioner of health he picks is likely to be male. Even in the COVID-19 response, we have seen fantastic responses, fantastic systems led by women, not even just internationally. You mentioned the Commissioner of Health here in Nigeria. And several female commissioners led a very robust response, working with the NCDC to ensure the limiting of the spread of the pandemic within their states. So women are capable. There's absolutely no doubt about that. So it's now about increasing the visibility of these women, amplifying the voices and the successes of successful female leaders in healthcare, so that it's not given the connotation of tokenism. You're not bringing women on board because it's nice to have. You're bringing women on board because they're capable and they can deliver. And so it's about looking for a capable, experienced, skilled manager of healthcare to manage the healthcare system at the state level and at the national level. And so we have to disabuse the system of those misconceptions and those false perceptions that have been holding women back from stepping into positions of leadership in healthcare. So one of the key things is increasing visibility for women and amplifying their successes where they are exhibited.
But a lot of women have not needed the men to give them the space to operate or to take positions of leadership when it comes to the medical sector. They've been able to stand up and grasp, that attention themselves. especially those two women I mentioned previously. They were able to stand up and say, you know what, I can do this. And they went all the way and they're doing it. I know that there are quite a few women as well who own hospitals out and out, not partnerships, out and out own hospitals, very successful hospitals for that matter. They didn't need to wait for anybody to give them the opportunity. They took the opportunity themselves. I am not of the opinion that power is given to anybody. I'm of the opinion that power is taken. So you have to stand up for yourself rather than wait for the opportunity to be presented to you. So I wonder why Nigerian women, like I said earlier on, as assertive as they are, as brilliant as they are, as intimidating as they can be, because everywhere else you go in the world, you find Nigerian women quite intimidating, to be quite honest. So why don't you have that, that level of representation that you adequately should have?
Okay, I thought Peju wanted to speak to this.
Yeah, Dr. Peju?
So I'm going to try and take a little bit of that question, and I'm going to go out of the health industry and then come back.
Okay.
Yes, I'm going to go out of the health industry and then come back. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm gonna. So this question was asked in a forum where where people talked about the political space, and they said, "Oh, all of our parties we want 50-50 gender parity. It's just that the women are not, coming out. They're not declaring, And this woman got up and spoke exactly to these. There are systematic obstacles that the system is quite dishonest about. Oh, wow. In the political space, very often, let's talk about the financial disparity.
Okay, so there seems to be some technical issue.
I hope you can see. So what I did is, because my network is a bit spotty, so I'm going to stop my.
Okay.
So can you?
We've lost you
now
there.
In the field of politics. Political meetings are held at night. Political meetings are held in the night, for instance, where you know that women will find it difficult to attend because of the
say you, Dr. P.
And they that is an if we because what tends to happen is at the level of community political engagement, you find women very well represented there. We have women's forums. We have the women are organizing very well at the community level because nobody's really interested for the power, the interest in power at that level. They don't want it, so women can have it. That's close to the grassroots. But when it comes to politicking at the level that's important to men and women, what tends to happen is that there are structural barriers. Like I said, there is a dishonesty about how everybody acts like these structural barriers are just accidents, coincidences. We don't know how it happened. We don't know how we happen to have a hall that doesn't have toilet facilities. We don't know how we happen to have a hall that we have a political garden where there's no space for a childbearing woman to bring her children, and then everybody pretends like these things don't happen. And then we ask ourselves, why are women not jumping over these 15 million obstacles that we're pretending not to see, and why are they not standing up? So so when we say why don't women grab it, there are these obstacles. They are studied and they are researched and they are codified in data. And if you want me to bring that data and present on this show, I will. But these are obstacles that stand in the way. We know that throughout the life.
Topic for another day, because from what you have said so far, there's a lot of lapses in the system when it comes to giving due consideration to women. That in itself is a huge and massive topic. But I don't know about the political meetings being held at night. So why are they holding political meetings at night? Well, that's another.
Okay, maybe you mean in the morning, 1 a.m. in the morning.
1 a.m. What are they discussing?
You mean in the morning? 3 a.m. is morning. 2 a.m. is morning.
It's morning.
Wow. So, the few women that have been able to succeed in Nigerian politics so far, do they attend those meetings as well at 3 a.m.?
Oh, they have to attend a lot of those meetings. They have to attend a lot of those meetings. It's just something. Well, for several women, they're like, look, this is something that I want, and like you said, they've gone for it despite those structural challenges, as Dr. Peju mentioned. So, but how many women would happily do that? There are some women who don't even have the choice to do that because this is something they want to go into public service. They want to take on positions where they're exhibiting public leadership, but they also have family situations that will preclude them from, say, attending a meeting at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. But they have the drive, they have the zeal, they have the commitment to the people. But these are some of those barriers that are stopping them from taking it to the finish line. And so these are some of the things that we also have to highlight as structural barriers that are holding women back from grabbing power or taking on positions of leadership. We can't hide our heads in the sand. There are realities for a lot of women.
Well, so how do you now have a comprehensive policy formulation, policy implementation, if you do not have adequate representation of the women? In a country like Nigeria, there's a rumor or a myth, I don't know which one of the two is more suitable, which is that there are more women than men. I don't know if that's true or not. But even if women are just 40% or 30% of the population, that's still a huge part of that population. So how can you not provide for them to be a part of that policy formulation and the policy implementation? You can't have a holistic society if you don't do that. How do those things work?
That's exactly the point. We do not have effective policy formulation.
Oh wow. So you constantly have a minister for women affairs over how many political dispensations, even the military dispensations. You usually have a minister for women affairs. You usually have first ladies of states and the nation always coming up with programs directed at women. I don't understand what those programs are for if women are not a part of the policy formulation. What are those programs for?
So, I mean, a lot of times, a lot of those programs are directed at some of the, say, health and development issues that are peculiar to women. So you would have maybe a governor's wife who decides that her project is to focus on economic empowerment for women, getting opportunities for them for financial literacy, setting up SMEs, things like that that build women's financial independence. That's a realistic problem that a lot of women, especially at the grassroots, face. And so a governor's wife is well within her rights to focus on that as an area. Now, the issue is that there are so many issues around women and gender parity. So even in health and well-being, we have women, up to 183 women who die every single day in Nigeria from causes related to pregnancy and childbirth. So if you see where 8 first ladies in northern Nigeria decide that maternal mortality is their issue, it's a valid issue because they are constantly beleaguered with data on women in their states dying. So that's another issue. It's a pressing issue as well. And so that's one of the things that Women in Global Health Nigeria chapter that's recently been formed is hoping to address by creating a platform where women in healthcare are given opportunities to speak on panels, given opportunities to be linked to boards where they can serve, given opportunities where they can increase the visibility of their capabilities and their competence. And so where the system is skewed against women, setting up this platform that amplifies the voices of women now makes it obvious to Nigerians. I don't think leaders have to be convinced. The populace has to be convinced. When every single Nigerian starts to ask why are women not in positions of leadership? As far as I'm concerned, the leaders will find their way into trying to assuage the populace into taking the right decisions. But there have to be forums and platforms where women find that they have an opportunity to speak, to show themselves, to show the capabilities of women, and carry on with doing the good work that they've been doing. And the rest will follow. But those platforms have to be there ab initio in recognition of the fact that there are these systemic and structural challenges that have stopped women from advancing from low and mid-level of leadership or positions in the profession to mid to high-level leadership.
So, the first Nigerian president of the Women International Medical Association, Dr. Eleanor Nwadinobi, a global body, but still segregated. You know, there's some form of segregation. It is still a women thing.
Yeah.
Now, we have been on a campaign for a bit now, about 3 months, on the issue of the pandemic rape, because rape is a pandemic global. It's a global issue. In northern Nigeria, you have the issue of VVF. Now, regardless of your gender, only a woman can give birth, regardless. So how come, like I, for instance, I love my mother, of course. If I ask the next man, he's going to tell me the same thing. I love my mother. And you ask the next one, he's going to tell you the same thing. I love my mother. If you love your mother so much, why do we have this exclusion? It's quite baffling.
It's baffling, but it's actually when you think about human nature, nobody wants to give up privilege. That's the truth. I mean, if someone has something that is valuable and it's been given to you, you're not going to take it and hand it over to someone else. So you see people talking about step up and grab, step up and take. But what we have failed to acknowledge is the fact that those that hold privilege and have held onto power have no incentive to want to give it away. And so that's why it's important to highlight these issues, highlight those structural barriers, and create awareness for the general public so that more voices are speaking to the same thing. It's like gender-based violence. It's been there, but more people started speaking out about it. Survivors started confronting the stigma and talking about it. And so a lot of people just got on that merry train. Because more people were speaking about it, it became more acceptable to be spoken about. And so that's the same thing with women in leadership. More people have to speak about it, speak about the challenges, and speak about ways that those challenges can be surmounted. And then we can then galvanize a movement to make sure that this does not become the norm. By the time Nigeria is celebrating 65 years, we shouldn't still be talking the same statistics on the reduced representation of women in leadership.
Now that you mentioned that, that before Nigeria gets to the age of 65, Nigeria is going to be 60 in a couple of days.
Yeah.
I'd like to make a correction. So initially we said that the first female doctor in Nigeria was 1971. No, she died in 1971. And I shouldn't have forgotten that, because I should have a very soft spot for this particular woman whose name is Elizabeth Abimbola Awoliyi. She was born in 1910 and she passed in 1971. She earned a medical degree in 1938 from the Royal College of Surgeons in Dublin, Ireland, and I live in Dublin. It makes me extremely proud, especially for the fact that the first Nigerian female doctor actually got her degree where I live. So I shouldn't have forgotten that, so I apologize. Now, that was way before Nigeria got the independence. And we're still talking about the same thing right now, which is, she was the first, that was in 1938. Tons and tons of male doctors got their certifications or got their degrees way before that, before the first woman did. Meaning that women were still excluded from the entire politics of careers and all of that. It still doesn't change the fact that people have questions that they need to ask when it comes to women in leadership. Is it a case of women are not pulling their weight, or is it a case of women have too many distractions, having to run their homes? I know that the average woman runs 2 jobs. She runs her career and then she runs the home. There's no doubt about that. And then if she happens to have maybe 3 or 4 boys and no girls, then that means she has 5 jobs, because she has, each son is a job on his own. You know, so I can understand all of that, but I'm sure a lot of people will still want to ask the question: is it a case of women are not pulling their weight? Are they not making enough contributions? Why do we have to be discussing the issue of leadership when it comes to women at all? Why do we have to? It should be a natural process, shouldn't it?
It should be a natural process, because women are contributing substantially to the profession. That's without a doubt. But like we said, when it comes to attaining these positions of leadership, there are structural barriers. There are challenges for women. Like you've mentioned, that women are raising a family. And so when they think of what is required, the hurdles they have to cross while still running their families and contesting for, say, the presidency of a national professional body, they're like, you know what, I don't need this hassle. But those hassles don't necessarily need to be there and skewed against a particular gender. It should be an open playing field where as long as someone is competent and has exhibited capability over the years of the profession, they should be allowed to marshal the support that they need within the profession to attain the positions of leadership. But a lot of times, from the beginning, they're like, Madam, face your family. It's patronizing and it's wrong. So that is the situation that a lot of women face. And so a lot of times, because of the experience of one woman or the other, others just fall back and don't go forward when opportunities for those the leadership positions present.
Well, I find that really strange. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking about a female Nobel Prize winner for medicine. If that can happen in other climes, why is it not happening in Africa? We'll be right back shortly after this quick commercial break. Hi, folks. Good evening. If you're just joining us, you're welcome to another edition of Just Banter. And tonight, I have 2 great guests on the show, Dr. Adaize Ore and Dr. Peju. Now, for some strange reason, well, is this strange? Well, I usually say strange because Nigeria, you can't keep bashing the country. We lost Dr. Peju for a second, but I'm sure she's going to be back any minute from now. Today, we're discussing women in roles of leadership when it comes to the healthcare sector. They are being excluded. So, that's what it seems like. We are asking, is it a case of they're not pulling their weight, they're not fighting enough? Somebody has already answered. Her name is Tolu Aire. And Tolu Aire says, we are certainly pulling our weight. I agree that you're certainly pulling your weight. When you talk of the likes of Francois Barre Sinusi, she shares the 2008 Nobel Medicine Prize for the discovery of HIV. Okay, we have Dr. Peju back. Hello, Dr. Peju. Okay, still hanging. So, Dr. Adaize, Dr. Barry Sinusi shared the Nobel Prize for the discovery of HIV. We haven't seen women, the female doctors in Nigeria, coming up with any unique discoveries or research. Is it a case of research is not done in Nigeria? Or is it a case of they are also being excluded when it comes to research?
So definitely no. A lot of women in Nigeria are definitely carrying out substantial research. There are people doing research in cancer. There are people doing research on maternal and reproductive health issues, even female professors in northern Nigeria. So no, that's not the case. But then there are challenges with research, generally research from Nigeria. And recently it's been highlighted that the global research, the whole research scene is skewed towards the developed world. And so you have bigger grants and support for research going to researchers and institutions in the West. So that's another thing altogether. But then when you look at the fact that you're talking about substantial grants and sponsorships for research, a lot of those things are network-based. A lot of those things come from being mentored, coached, and championed by people who have been advanced in those areas. So definitely, we come again to those structural barriers. Where you have systems where a lot of male researchers have succeeded in attracting a lot of grants, are recognized, they most likely mentor, coach, and champion younger male researchers. That's just the way of the world. And so a lot of times, women do get into some of these research groups, but not to the level that their male counterparts have done in the past. And so that's why you'll be hearing about research that is sponsored or supported by many globally recognized bodies. And a lot of times those fundings are going to male researchers and researchers that have the backing of champions that have benefited along those chains of grant attraction. And so this again speaks to those structural barriers that we've been talking about this evening. But then there's some women who, despite these challenges, have managed to contribute substantial research in various areas. And so I'll highlight just a few of them. Professor Galadanchi is a northern professor who has done a lot of work in women's health, and she's from northern Nigeria. Then there's Dr. Jedi Agba, who's done a lot of work in cancer. Professor Ifeoma Okoye. These are women who, despite some of these challenges, have done a lot of work in cancer research. So these are just a few of those women who are fighting systemic challenges to still make their voices heard and contribute to the health sector.
Well, one of my favorite people in the world is actually a female doctor called Dr. Modile. She's been my family doctor for forever. And I love her so much because I see the passion she puts into her practice and how she relates with each and every patient that she comes across as if they are family. You smile, Dr. Adesi. You happen to know Dr. Modile?
Yes, I know of her.
Okay, all right.
She's a very humane doctor as well.
Exactly. So I'm not far off the point. She is somebody that has shown a lot of compassion. She's put a lot of passion into her practice. Each and every one of her patients that I've ever come across, she's always treated each and every one of them like family. It seems to be the general trend when it comes to female doctors as opposed to the male doctors. The male doctors are a bit more impersonal. They're a bit more business-like in terms of their practice. In my opinion, for such a scenario, women should actually be the ones at the top of the ladder when it comes to healthcare leadership. But then you now have the exact opposite. It's a shame as far as I'm concerned, because I think something needs to be done about it. So if women have formed a parallel medical association to represent them, what exactly is the goal of that parallel medical association?
So the medical, okay, Beju, yeah.
I don't know if this thing is going to permit me. I'm having a very interesting day staying within this conversation, but I know that our representation of Dr. Daisy at Women in Global Health Nigeria, we're not worried at all. But I'm going to quickly rush through that question. Well, it's less about women medical association, about what, and there I go again. We wanted the conversation to be bigger than that. So it's a shame that women had to form their own association because maybe the old boys club wouldn't let the women in. But what tends to happen also is that even when there's an association, the only way for that association to make sense is to be able to effectively lobby policy development. You asked earlier that how do we then formulate good policies? That are, if we're not being gender sensitive. And the simple answer is that we do not formulate the best policies because there's no woman in the room to help in the design process. And oftentimes at the implementation process, that's when we see that, this could have been better designed if there was somebody on, from a woman's perspective, being on the field, being often a beneficiary. Somebody should have added a beneficiary eye on this to say, oh, this won't work. Because a lot of the policy designs are usually top down and you don't have somebody who will interface at the point in which you need to deliver. A simple example is if we decide to face water sanitation, the woman in the house is the expert on domestic water use and sanitation. So she's the one that can tell you exactly how to design a community pump. She can tell you what time, where do we put that pump? What time do we put on the pump? What time do we close the pump? This is the time when we should ensure that, oh, this pump has water from so-and-so hour to so-and-so hour, because that's the time when the household water use is at the peak. The men just come and expect everyone to be fed, dressed, cleaned. And especially in Nigeria, these things are soft policies. These are soft things that men are not interested in. Or if you say you want to design a policy for malaria and you say, oh, you know what, give everybody insecticide nets and let them sleep under it. There's the person at home ensuring that these nets so she's the one that can tell you, oh, if you have one big net for mother, child, and father, it's not going to work. So you see that in a lot of these policy designs, you don't see the gender eye, you don't see that domestic implementer there.
Yes.
Female doctors had to create a female medical association, but still that association cannot lobby right. Let's think about all the things you need to lobby. You need money. There is a systematic pay gap between the man and the woman, a pay gap we don't like to talk about. You need networks, you need associations, but women are encouraged to stay in silos because they're encouraged to continue the grueling day-to-day work of family raising, and they cannot therefore form effective networks. So a woman who's pursuing a career oftentimes is pursuing that career solo. So how do you press on policy when you are unable to form associations, when the day-to-day logistics of running a home are keeping you down? How can you have children be able to bring those children into the workspace when the workspace are not designed or optimized for children? They told us that a woman cannot stay at home and work, but COVID made all of us stay home and work, and work is still going on, which shows that it was not because we couldn't reimagine the workspace. It was that we were unwilling to reimagine the workspace for a woman that has domestic obligations as well. We were unwilling, because if I'm able to sit here in Abuja and we have people who can hear us, somebody will say, I cannot let a breastfeeding woman do remote work because she will not be productive. That was never the problem. Remote work was never the problem. It just was that the system was unwilling to be creative for a woman. And here's the thing, the woman, by doing her domestic duties, is actually nation building. She's ensuring that children are fed, immunized, educated, so that in 15 years, your national capital your human capital. The woman is working to ensure that you actually have a human capital in 15 years. And yet she won't catch a break from you. So these are the structural
like we have said,
barriers
like we mentioned earlier, Dr. Peju, there's a lot of breakages, but I'll buttress your point. Like we have said several times, especially when it comes to the campaign that we keep talking about, which is a campaign against rape.
Let us not.
Hello, Dr. Peju? So that connection's a bit.
I can hear you.
All right, that's great.
Yes,
so,
I'm having a very interesting day with my connection.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, well, we understand that, technology sometimes can play you up, and what can you do? You just have to ride the wave, however it comes.
Yeah.
So like I was saying earlier on, in the campaign that we have been on and on about for the past 3-4 months on the issue of rape, we keep saying something to the general public for them to hear and consume, which is this. You can't have a healthy society if you don't have healthy women.
True.
Regardless of what anybody thinks, if you think that as Africans, we always wash away whatever issues that we have and then we just keep carrying on, that's not true. It's simply because mental health issues are downplayed in our society. We don't realize that when somebody goes through mental abuse, it affects the person for the rest of their lives. So you have a woman in the house who has a lovely background, she has a lovely education, she has 2-3 children, she wakes up one day and then she walks away for no apparent reason. It's mental health issues. Probably she has been abused at one point in time or the other. 1 in 4 women in Nigeria before the age of 18 get abused. They experience rape. Now, these are things that we are saying we need to fight against. But because a lot of women are not in the leadership positions across board, whether it's in healthcare or in politics, it seems that women are not being heard. We are at a loss on what to do when it comes to that. We don't know how to address that situation. The only thing we can keep doing is keep talking about things like this and try to listen to the women and try to say, okay, you know what? Your mama too na woman. So it's time for you to start looking at issues from the perspective of if women don't have adequate contribution to policy formulation and implementation, then you don't have a balanced society. But for how long do we keep talking about this before things change? Dr. Daisy.
Yeah, so it's not just about talking, it's also about doing. And so for those women who can step up, it's not just about stepping up individually, but speaking to other women in the profession, speaking to other women in the country to encourage them as much as possible to get on board. And so that's why I've been talking about platforms that encourage women, platforms that create a space where you can amplify women's voices, give them the opportunity to speak. And by giving them that visibility, opportunities for leadership then come up. But for every woman who attains a position of leadership, it's not just to be there as the first woman and remain the only woman. It's about encouraging other women so that you are the first of many, and then other women can come on board. Because for as long as women's voices are not heard in the leadership space, Nigeria will continue to function at less than 50% of its potential. It's as simple as that. The data is there to show that countries that do not encourage women to function in leadership positions will continue to operate suboptimally. And so this is something that we need to do. Mentoring is important. Beju mentioned networking groups and old boys clubs. There have to be mentoring groups, networks that encourage women to build support, build strong networks that can carry out effective lobbying. You can't get away from it. It's crucial. And so once we start, it's not just about talking about it, but creating that opportunity so that women who were a bit on the fence can be encouraged by seeing other women attaining positions of leadership and then struggle to do the same. But we need to keep this discourse open in the public arena. Every single Nigerian has to realize that these gaps are there, those fences, those structural barriers are there, and to start asking questions. Why does it have to remain this way? There's a quote that I especially like, and it's like, we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking that got us into those problems. And it's from Albert Einstein.
Absolutely true.
We can't just accept things because they are the status quo and that's the way things have been. Perhaps it's time for us to change the narrative, change the way things operate, bring on more women, encourage women where they are interested in taking on positions of leadership, supporting them, realizing that by virtue of being women, by virtue of being mothers, by virtue of being wives, there are challenges that they face. And so we change the system such that those challenges, which are crucial to nation building, which are crucial to building up the next generation, are not allowed to stop women from taking on positions of leadership. And that's where we should be going, and that's where the focus should be.
So I had an opportunity about a week ago to sit with a candidate for the vice presidency of the National Association of Nigerian Students. And she pointed out something. She said that women don't support women when women are going for positions of leadership, especially when they're elective positions. How true is that?
Well, I would say not in all cases, but definitely that's an issue. And when I talk about the misconceptions and the false perceptions, it's not just men that have those misconceptions. Even some women believe that, oh, I'm a woman and I cannot go beyond a certain level. Let me just put my head down and be doing the work. But when it comes to leadership and when it comes to decision making, I really shouldn't have a say. And so many people, many women too, have been conditioned to have that mindset. And so that's why even when we're doing the advocacy about women in leadership, we're doing the advocacy not just to men, but also to women. Because when a woman has that mindset, definitely if she sees another woman vying for a position, she's going to support the guy, because in her mindset, a woman is not capable. And so these are some of those mental barriers that we need to break down, both for men and for women. And so that's why the candidate for VP has that experience, because she's probably interfaced with other women who are like, babe, go and sit down, really, let the guys do this, and so she's not getting the support that she feels that she needs to take her to the next level.
Well, I didn't think, when she mentioned that, I didn't think she was far off the mark, simply because I see stuff like that on social media, like on Facebook and all that. And then I now see, captions like women supporting women, stuff like that. So it definitely is a problem of sorts. I don't understand why that happens. Probably woman nature, not human nature. Probably that's probably what the situation is.
Well, I think it's more about cultural and societal stereotypes that both men and women have imbibed over the years. And I think that has a lot to do with it. And so where a woman feels that she's not capable, instead of supporting another woman who has said, well, I'm going to put my head out, I'm going to stick out my neck and go for this, instead of supporting that woman, those thoughts that a woman shouldn't vie for those positions, instead of supporting that woman, you then try to bring her down and reestablish those stereotypes that only men should be in positions of leadership. It's unfortunate, but those are the cultural and societal stereotypes that have led to that.
Well, we've had great women like Amina of Zaria, you've had Efu Shaitan, you've had Madame Tinubu, and the list goes on and on and on and on and on. Why should we still be battling these same issues in the 21st century?
Because these issues have benefited some people and they have established and are holding on to those privileges and power. And so if we're talking culture, then fantastic. We will bring back the culture of the Queen Aminas and the women of our history who have been strong leaders, and show that it is Nigerian culture for women to be leaders, for women to take on positions of responsibility, and to show the capabilities and competencies of which they're able.
Well, we lost Dr. Kweju, unfortunately. Her connection seems to have gone totally off air in the course of the show. This is not over. We're probably going to do another session sometime soon. And then we're going to be able to talk a bit more in depth about women in healthcare leadership. Unfortunately, we don't have that much time. We have just maybe about 5 minutes left. And I'm enjoying myself. I'm having a great time because we are talking about what is truly, truly a fundamental flaw, especially when it comes to African countries. And I think it's absolutely amazing that this type of thing will still be happening, especially in Africa, where we have found out that when men decide that they want to rule in totality, things truly don't work. All the African countries, you can see what's going on. But when you look at the likes of Rwanda, which is what, almost an anomaly, almost an anomaly when it comes to Africa. Unfortunately, where you see a man actually ruling and is actually doing things. But all the other countries, we've seen what the men have been doing. But there have been a few women in positions of power who have shown that they can equally be as devastating to the economy and to the society as men. I'm not going to mention names, but I'm sure a lot of the viewers can relate to some of these issues of these women that have been in positions of power and there have been gross abuse.
Yeah.
We're all fallible, but it's time for women to start looking at each other and saying, you know what, we need to start supporting ourselves, not just a case of putting black and white pictures on social media and stuff like that, but actually doing positive things, supporting themselves when it comes to careers, supporting themselves when it comes to career politics, and supporting themselves when it comes to the actual politics in day-to-day life, policies, formulation, implementation. We need to start looking at how to gather ourselves as men as well and start looking at the women and saying, you know what, I admit and I accept that you are much more qualified than I am, so you should have this position and lead from the front. Now, one of our guests says something. Her name is Folake Oyewa. She says perceptions and expectations in society about the role of women are prejudiced against women. So it's the same thing that we all keep talking about, the same issues. Prejudice, exclusion, bullying, abuse, all sorts. The list just keeps going on and on and on. Well, I'm an advocate for women. I love women because probably I love my mother and I love my family. My family is dominated by women anyways. We have more women than men in my family. So probably that's why I have a very soft spot for women. But I also believe that women are very competent, especially when it comes to their careers. They are able to juggle several careers at the same time, running their financial careers and running their home careers. So I always give it to them, and I always show a lot of love and a lot of respect when it comes to the abilities of women. We're going to be giving our take-care messages shortly after this. Unfortunately, Dr. Kweju is not here to sign up with us. But Dr. Adeize, we're very glad that you're able to make it, come on the show, and stay the entire length of the show. Your network, we'll have to ask you secretly what network you're on. Is it almost perfect throughout the show? It is a rarity when it comes to broadcasting out of Nigeria. But it's been fantastic having you on the show, and we hope we'll have you on again very soon to discuss a bit more in depth on the solutions, because all we have talked about tonight, more or less, is problems. So we need to start talking about solutions. I'm a solutions advocate. I always like to talk about solutions, but if you can't identify the problems, then you can't deal with the solutions. So it's been great having you on, and we'll see you
so much.
very soon.
Thank you so much. It's been a fantastic conversation.
Enjoy Nigeria at 60, and we hope at Nigeria at 61, we'll have our first female president of the Nigeria Medical Association. You have a great evening.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night. So, pretty interesting conversation with Dr. Kweju Adeniro and Dr. Adeize Ore. We are sorry we lost Dr. Kweju Adeniro somewhere during the show. Technical problems. When it comes to technology, you never can tell. They throw a curveball at you at any point in time. But we have seen the power of women in society. We have seen what women can do. We know that they're very, very capable of running multiple careers, running their homes and running their businesses, running whatever careers that they decide to venture into. And they do it quite effectively. They are just as human as men. They can be fallible as well. So in some cases, we've had women in high positions of power who have also fallen into the trap of corruption, and giving room for people to look at women and say, you know what, women are just as bad. They can't handle the stuff. So let us men continue to rule things. But you can't have a balanced society when you do not have equal participation of women. So we'll now go to our social messages, which we'll always take up towards the end of every show. And we're going to talk initially about the issue of rape again, probably because it's related to this topic that we're discussing, which is women leadership healthcare, or healthcare leadership rather, which is you can't have a balanced society, you can't have a healthy society if women are being abused. Women are the foundation of every society. They're the ones that give birth. They are the ones who train the children because the men are too busy running around trying to make ends meet. So we say women also make ends meet as well. They participate strongly. In a lot of cases, 50, 60%, in some cases, the men don't even participate at all, and the women gets to run the homes and run the families, and they do it adequately. So we need women to have a stable, balanced mind. They need to be saved from abuse. Now, we're not saying that men are also not abused, because in Nigeria, for instance, like we keep talking about, 1 in 10 men before the age of 18 actually go through abuse, i.e. rape. So the issue of rape goes across for both genders. We'll continue to fight against it. We will always tell you, please use the social handles that we put out there. Say no to rape, no excuse for rape at all. Okay, yeah, so there you have it on your screen. Say no to rape, use the hashtag no excuse, use the hashtag no to rape. Say something about it, say something against it. You need to be very vigilant when you're dealing with your children. Know the people that you're leaving your children with. Be very, very wary when your children are not acting as normal. They probably have something to say. They don't know how to say it to you. So you need to keep a very diligent eye and watch out for them. And you, the men who are largely the perpetrators of rape, remember, your mama too na woman. So you wouldn't like something like that to happen to your mother. So please, please, please find a solution to whatever your urge is that could drive you to commit the crime rape. It is a grievous crime against humanity. COVID-19 is still very real. You still have it ravaging nations all across the globe. Please maintain a safe distance. The recommended distance is 2 meters. Please wash your hands as often as possible and wear a face mask so that everybody can stay safe and everybody can live a healthy life. Yes, we know we're in the new norm, but we hope that we can go back to the old norm. Yes, life is evolutionary, but things do change. So on that note, we're going to call it a night, and we're going to play one of my favorite songs ever, which is by TY featuring Zeda. Yes, we've been playing it quite a while, but I'm still going to play it again. Maybe just a short clip. And if you can, please go to YouTube and go and watch the full length of the song.
Say you hear the things where they happen. Say we no fit move as things don't they happen. See a dad don't end for coma, a chioma don't get amnesia. Say who away don't die. All the girls for street on the bagger, cause bad guys stay for the area, oh yeah. Say bad boys stay for corner, oh yeah. And them talk say them go take it by force. Them go one day talk say no be them fault. Said I help me tell them.
Say no excuse, oh.
No excuse, oh.
Your mama na woman, no excuse, oh.
No excuse,
No.
So remember that, no excuse. On that note, we're going to call it a night, and we thank you all, as usual, for supporting us and constantly watching the program Just Banter on FromARadio.com. Please follow us on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter, and on YouTube. We appreciate your support, and we'll see you again on Thursday when Nigeria is 60 for the Nigeria at 60 show. You have a great night. Good night.